Welcome to The Chemical Show, the podcast where chemical means business. I'm your host, Victoria Meyer, bringing you stories and insights from leaders driving innovation and growth across the chemical industry. Each week, we explore key trends, real-world challenges, and the strategies that make an impact. Let's get started. Welcome back to The Chemical Show, where chemical means business. Today, we are continuing on our theme of sustainability and innovation, green and bio, as we continue throughout the month of April. And today, I am really excited to welcome Dr. Charlie Landis, who literally just retired as the Chief Technology Officer of Integrity Biochem. Charlie has a wealth of experience in the industry, 35 years in energy and chemicals, including at Halliburton, before joining and really being part of the startup team for Integrity Biochem, developing the first generation technology and the second generation and commercializing it. And as we know, this whole journey towards sustainability and innovation is not easy. Charlie's going to share some of those insights, some of the biggest questions and decisions that he and the team have to make, and that may be great advice for you guys that are listening and more. So Charlie, welcome to The Chemical Show.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you for your interest in IBC as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So excited to have you here today. Let's just start talking about you. What is your origin story? How did you get interested in this space of geochemistry and more, right? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, geochemistry in itself was a new field in the last century, and I studied an uncommon mineral and realized quickly that it had to interact with water. And that became an entire field called aqueous geochemistry in the late 80s and 90s that exploded into the geosciences. And it just interested me that the traditional geologic studies could be expanded toward dynamic applications in real time at the surface where the civilization interacts with the natural materials. And it just fascinated me from the day I took my first test in the class. I was able to pass the test, which also helped with the motivation, but it was a career driven by a passion of trying to understand how these seemingly inert things react with something as dynamic as water.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. So geochemistry, I mean, how did you even think about getting into this field? Is it really that you were interested in geology and rocks? I mean, I don't know. I've yet to figure out how somebody does it. And yet, obviously, we need geologists. We need people that understand rocks and water and all this formation.
Well, I'll give you the solidifying story. It was in the mid 1980s, and I was watching American media, and they announced when President Reagan announced his plans for the Star Wars Defense Initiative. And I sat there as a graduate student trying to understand how we could use laser technology to characterize rocks. That's what a scientist is supposed to do, is think of these seemingly disparate ideas and try to make value of them. And I drafted a proposal for my advisor, and he turned that into a multi-million-dollar 4-year dissertation project that utilized some of the lasers that were common at the time for the first time to understanding how the organic and inorganic chemistry of the rock changes when you have a laser impinge upon that rock. Well, that sounds incredibly nerdy, and I'm sorry if it does, but those are the types of things that fascinate a scientifically curious mind, and at the time I certainly had that. So
yeah,
I don't know.
That.
I wish I could tell you. They didn't make a movie called Inception about that moment, but I wish I could have a movie that explained how I felt that night I watched it on television.
Yeah. I think it's actually fascinating because we all get sparked by something, right? And I do think this idea of kind of two ideas mashing together, that's where some of the greatest innovations come from. So you studied this, and then you went off and you worked for Halliburton. Is that?
Well, I should give you my whole history.
Yeah.
I have 3 degrees in the geosciences. I have a PhD from Texas Tech. And my first job was with an oil exploration company called Oracle Oil and Gas in their research facility. And I was there for 5 years studying the same rocks that are currently being exploited around the United States for unconventional oil and gas. And then I was approached to take a job with a minerals company in Chicago looking at bentonite deposits around the world. When I then, shortly thereafter, took a job in Australia trying to use that expertise to take that material and turn it into a water treatment chemical. And when
Got it.
9/11 occurred, my parents wanted me to come home, and I landed at Halliburton. I was there for 14 years, gratefully working in their laboratory, understanding how drilling fluids interact downhole, primarily in the non-oil field applications, but understanding those properties and realizing the value of taking a natural material and turning it into an efficient material used for economic benefit in drilling, whether it was improved oil recovery, more water production from a water well, higher geothermal properties when you had shallow geothermal heat loops, whatever the range of opportunities were, they just basically ask us to design a fluid to solve that problem.
Yeah. And then how'd you get to Integrity Biochem?
The best thing in life is to get that shoulder tap by a friend, and our CEO, who had an original dream of having a vertically integrated chemical company. There was something that he could control from the inception of the molecular design to the retail sale to a customer. And we spoke on the phone one day, just after work someday. We got on the phone and decided that we would do something like this if the opportunity ever presented himself. And I don't know if you've interviewed Jimmy Jett, but he's our CEO, and he was very good at explaining his original vision for the company. It just struck me as a great opportunity at my stage in my career to try something like that. It was absolutely a wonderful opportunity that I would not want to pass up. I would advise anyone, if they ever get that shoulder tap, to at least take the phone call. It changed my life with respect to being able to take everything you've learned along the way and turn it into a vertically integrated, service-oriented, technical product supply company, which is what we have at IBC.
Awesome. I love that. And, one of the things I like to say, in fact, that tap on the shoulder, what I always like to say as well is when opportunity knocks,
Yep.
open the door.
You
Open
have
the door, see what's
Yeah.
there, and get ready to walk through. So it sounds like you did. So tell us a little bit about Integrity Biochem, because I've had actually Mike Suver on the show a couple times and Chad Hall, but I always love to hear your point of view, and not everybody's necessarily familiar with the company.
Great story. Even in Cliff Note form, it's a deep and rich story of technical excellence, commercial bravery, and persistence, the type of things that sort of the building blocks for success, where we've taken a raw material that's been overlooked or undiscovered or poorly considered or not considered and turned it into a commercially viable product for a range of applications. And we control everything from the chemical synthesis of the molecule or manufacture of the molecule to the packaging and delivery and use of the molecule through our channel partners in the marketplace. It's a fantastic little story of literally starting from an idea around a fundamental understanding of the chemistry and turning it and understanding how it can be used in the marketplace to create value for our customers.
Got it. So tell me more about this chemistry, because I got to be honest, I still don't really understand what it is. It's a biosurfactant, is that right?
Well, that's one of our two core platforms. So we identified a molecule that has unique capabilities in the sense that it's a polymer, but it's not as big as the other polymers that were used in the industry. In other words, it's literally 1,000 times smaller. Most of the polymers that are used are large, heavier, long, linear molecules or cyclic molecules.
So physically, like molecularly, it's a small molecule.
Right.
Okay.
And then there was a body of literature that came out that convinced me when Jimmy asked me to evaluate the technology. There was a body of literature that came out that said that in the 20 years while I was doing something else, the rest of the chemical world taught themselves how to change those molecules to make them even perform better. And when we put those pieces together, and Jimmy and I realized from our collective experience in the industry that there was a need for what that molecule could be, we decided to pursue the first platform, and that is encapsulation. We were able to make it like minerals or attract to minerals that would damage oil field production. And if we could use that molecule correctly, we could minimize that damage and unlock value for our customers that they wouldn't be expecting otherwise.
Got it. So your first product and your first chemistry and first target market was really oil field chemicals. And this product does it let you produce more oil? I mean, what does it let you do?
It has 2 or 3 functions at once. It keeps the reservoir from clogging up itself. If you can imagine, I don't know if you've ever been to a dam and you would see twigs come to the front of the dam before they go out the drainage pipe.
Yeah.
As you drain a reservoir, those twigs pile up and less water goes out the drainage pipe, right? So we keep those twigs from ever reaching the draining point drain pipe of that particular dam and allow more oil or liquids to be produced from that reservoir. So that's a form of what they call fines control. And that was an undertreated need in the oil field that certainly adds value if you can control that over a period of time to allow more hydrocarbons to be produced. And so that's the primary use. And obviously that has application from everything from cat litter dust control to fines migration on dirt roads. Those types of things all are equally applicable in different environments, but the founding application was in the oil field, trying to keep those fines from clogging the pore throats in unconventional reservoirs.
That's crazy. So that's crazy. That's really awesome. And when I talk to your colleagues at IBC, in fact, Mike Suver is one that he introduced me to you, and he was just like, "You've got to talk to Charlie. He's the most amazing guy," and he gives. He really is. You know what? It is such a credit when you've got people around you that love you, that laud you, that really appreciate you. So, kudos to you and to the IBC team, because I do think you guys have developed a great team there. And, you and Jimmy Jett, you were there from the origins. Mike and others credit you with identifying, developing this core chemistry. And you kind of talked a little bit about how that comes about, but you make it sound a little bit easy, to be honest. Well, we saw this idea and it worked. It's more difficult than that. I know it's more than difficult than that. So what have you found to be really critical in creating that success and helping to develop that technology?
Well, there are some peculiar attributes of a good mind that are required to take something like that and turn it into, and I qualify as having those peculiar attributes. You have to be able to connect disparate data sets and understand things that are not in the same zip code, but certainly could be a wonderful vacation if you experience it all at once within 2 or 3 adjacent zip codes, if that makes sense to you. So there was clearly the ability to understand that there was a market need. Jimmy and I have been in the industry for over 50 years. We understood that was a problem. And we made a judgment that it was not being addressed adequately with the existing chemistry. So there was that obvious commercial need, and we understood that there'd be customers interested in solving that problem.
Yeah.
Then there was the unique chemical structure. You have to be able to recognize uniquenesses in everything that you do or the results that you produce from your scientific work. And this chemical had a unique chemical structure. It was a lower molecular weight linear polymer. And then lastly, I had the access to one of the best minds. I don't know if you've met one of our research fellows, a fellow named Dr. Ashoka Maduri. I could trust him to understand. He explained to me how well they can manufacture this molecule in the 21st century. And then the final step was, does IBC have the manufacturing expertise and capital to make the product at scale? So those 4 things all had to be entered and agreed upon to be readily available to go ahead and move ahead, because we were putting our hard-earned capital and time and effort into the project. And once we came to that, it was a Harry Truman decision. I don't know if you ever read about Harry Truman. When he made
I haven't.
When he made a decision, he goes to bed and when he wakes up and he feels good about it, that was the decision. You never look back. So that's the key. The final key is, once you make a decision on all the information you think you need, you don't look back. So we just went about our business to do those things and get the job done.
And I guess, to me, it makes sense to a certain degree that where IBC started was really the oil field, because I do feel like there's a whole lot of cowboy risk taking that takes place, right? And so sometimes it's, whether it's in your DNA or whether it's in just the experience that you've got around risk and reward and the ability just to identify and take that risk.
That's half the story. So in the oil field, we are a risk-taking group. But in this particular case, it was combined with Warren Buffett's belief that you only invest in things you know. I read Warren Buffett's newsletter every spring, and one of the first articles was, you only invest in stuff that he understands. And if you're going to start and take a chance in this world, you might as well start with something you think you understand. So we put those 2 things together, and Jimmy and I and a couple other of the original founders, Mr. Bryce Parker, we all got together and said, this is something we can do.
Yeah.
And that's how it happened. And it was, and you're right. I make it sound much simpler. There were decades of scientific research. You have to be able to synthesize and understand the key parts of that, the results of those research efforts. and put it together and bring those disparate data sets together and then decide what to do with it.
Yeah. What I think is interesting, Charlie, and this is just an observation from as you talk about your origin story and combining lasers and rocks and whatever and figuring out that there's money there in this and what you're doing here with IBC. I actually think there's like a unique aspect to your ability to not just do the science, but match the science up with money and customer value, because that's often does not exist in the same person. That's what creates conflict across organizations, right? When the researchers say, but this is the best molecule. Yeah, but nobody's going to buy it. And so figuring out how to bridge the science and the market can be really challenging. How did you guys do that? I mean, so obviously it sounds like you kind of inherently understand that. But I think this idea that you create something, I don't believe in the field of dreams. If you build it, there is no guarantee that they will come. You
Sure.
have to figure out how to identify or how to create that market. How did that play out for you guys?
Jimmy and I both had, and Bryce and some of the other officers in the company had decades of experience understanding how to manufacture and mix chemicals. One of the best untold stories of our company is our chief operating officer, who would never admit it otherwise, is one of the more talented people to blend water-based products. And this is a water-based product. And not that that was singularly the most important thing, but everywhere you turned in IBC, we went down a checklist of things we needed to do, and Jimmy was a master at this. And I always say to people that he would struggle without us and we would fail without him. This is where it really showed up. He was able to understand and put these pieces together. He had 2 or 3 pieces of information for me. He had his vast experience from the marketplace to understand the customer needs. And we have clearly some of the highest quality people in product manufacture who could give him the confidence to know that we could scale up this scientific phenomenon into a scalable product. From the idea through the manufacture to the supply chain and delivering product is one of the skills that is frankly beyond science. It's about your ability to understand commercial potential. And this is where the credit really goes to Jimmy and the team he has around him.
Yeah.
For me, it was a very, I have to tell you, the first decision that I was shocked how easy it was going to be for me, Victoria. I'm going to be honest now. This is something perhaps I shouldn't confess, but
I like confessions. We could almost call this true confessions of the chemical show. How's that?
well, it makes it so easy when you believe and know certain facts around the general nature of what's needed to complete a process. We knew we needed to be able to keep these fines from migrating in the reservoir.
Yeah.
And encapsulation, which is our primary tool, is a known solution to do that. Encapsulating things controls the movement and timing of movement of particles.
Yeah.
And in our case, we had something that was in water. We knew the reservoir, we were going to be injecting makeup water into the reservoir. And we knew that we had a molecule that was likely to perform in that circumstance. And then we ran tests that the industry uses as indicators of that performance, and proved it to ourselves and proved it to the industry. So from my point of view, I had a world-class synthetic biochemist, Dr. Ashoka Midori. I had a known commercial need. I had a primary understanding of what the minerals were that were causing the problem. So my checklist for success was shorter than Jimmy's, but it did allow Jimmy to say, okay, if I get that under control, we can go do this. And it really, it sounds easier than it was, but it really draws from the experience we all had collectively around the sizing up an opportunity.
Was this technology or these products and the encapsulation, was that already taking place? So I know you said, you guys recognized and the market knew there was an opportunity because there was a problem and so you could solve for it. Were others already doing this? Were you able to, kind of piggyback or follow the lead of somebody that was already doing it, or is this completely new?
We were able to translate it from other areas of the industry. So encapsulation is used for other drilling aids and other different types of drilling applications, but not in the category of what's known as clay control. So we basically injected this in a way that was unique. And, people have tried it in the past, but I think in this particular case, they didn't have the right ingredients. They didn't have the right size molecule. They didn't have the ability to, engineer the molecule to perform the way we did. So we had some differences that allowed us to do that. But yes, we were clever enough to draw from the history of other applications and bring it into our particular application.
How much of this is luck versus, kind of deliberate choices? And I ask that, and I ask that in a way because it's really easy and a lot of times to identify new chemistries and to identify new products, right? Humans and scientists and people across the industry, we're creative. We can identify new things. And in isolation, in a lab, in a notebook, as you're sketching out this idea, you talked about crashing two ideas together. Okay, when you crash two ideas together, in theory, you can come up with something. And yet we know it is not easy to implement and it's not easy to scale and take them to market. So just, I ask that luck versus not question, but maybe more importantly, what advice do you have? How could others be taking this approach and applying it successfully elsewhere?
Well, that is a challenging question. I will tell you that I personally never thought it was lucky that we were able to scale it up because I have great faith in the people who run our manufacturing process. They are phenomenally good
Yeah.
at manufacturing water-based chemicals. And as an investor and as a founder of the company, that's one of our strongest pieces. So I will tell you there's no luck in that.
Yeah.
For a scientist to have invincible value, they have to have a passion that's fueled by curiosity to constantly be on the lookout for particular or unusual molecules that provide unusually or rarely obtained results. And that is a key thing. And then you have to be able to turn that into a direct understanding how it may be applied for an industrial benefit. Those are the two things. If you're not at a red light and someone doesn't beep your horn, turn left, that means you're not distracted in your subconscious enough to be thinking about some of the weird, unique, uncommon results of science that allows for an opportunity to be discovered. And there's a certain element of that some people will call luck. It was probably luck that Jimmy and Charlie, I'll probably say it was more about persistence, but Jimmy and Charlie came across this molecule that no one had yet observed or examined for an oilfield application. We just got the first base first with this molecule for this application. I would grant some degree of luck on that, but I also know that luck was driven by a passion and a curiosity to look for a new molecule that's been bypassed that had properties that people would recognize once you were able to confirm it for them, recognize as valuable. So on the scaling side, IBC's manufacturing capacity is second to none. And I'm very proud to work with our customer service and manufacturing folks because of it. And on the scientific side, I think we're driven by a passion around our intent to explore a molecule that's been, to quote James T. Kirk, to go where no man's gone before with this molecule. So there's a lot of that I think would be ascribed to luck. But the reality is it's a luck driven by passion and curiosity.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's right. I mean, I think, the other thing is luck is when preparedness meets opportunity, is one way of saying it. In your case, it's curiosity and readiness, right? Just being ready to do more. So IBC, so we talked about, kind of this discovery of the first generation technology, and you guys are now working on second generation technology. Tell us more about that and what that is and how that kind of builds on each other, and where it's going.
So that is the second of the two strategic decisions I thought I was able to work with Jimmy to proceed and develop. It's the toughest decision of my professional life. I mean, achievement in the first days is a very lonely moment. And when you discover something, whether you do it collectively or by yourself, you have to have the professional confidence to recognize what you've done. And in the spring of 2020, during the first days of COVID, I had a great young scientific mind come into my laboratory and propose an idea to synthesize a new category of biosurfactants. He's a wonderful young fellow who was able to recognize opportunity in a molecule that hasn't been seen, put together or assembled in a way to make a product that has not yet been developed in the industry. And that was during the COVID period when we were focused on other things like company survival and product changes in our product mix. And we had to sequester him scientifically to synthesize and commit to the focus during those times, those unsettling times, to develop this molecule. And that became our surfactant technology. And that scientist now spawned an entire generation, probably 2 or 3 decades worth of basic scientific research that allowed us to assemble the team that Jimmy's assembled today to diversify our company into this biosurfactant space. And
Got it.
that was a 3 to 6 month period of securing the focus of a great young scientific mind to synthesize this molecule in a way that we could present back to the company in a time when they probably wanted to talk about almost anything else other than COVID. So it was an opportunity. It was a challenge when you are a geologist and you are being asked to make decisions around a new chemical species. You must draw from every resource available to you. That's why I reached out to a fellow like Mike. And I hope you've had a chance to talk with Dr. Dan Durr. He's a world-renowned surfactant chemist.
Yeah.
And then I had the folks in our laboratory, all trained chemists, who gave me assurances that I could speak to Jimmy about something that we had discovered and now serve as the platform of opportunity for our company for decades to come.
Yeah.
So it was very gratifying, but it's also among the most stressful things I've ever had to do.
What made it stressful for you?
I have spent a lifetime looking at rocks, and particularly shales and the unconventional rocks in the oil field. And I feel like I could talk to almost anyone about those things, those materials. But I've never performed a chemical synthesis to manufacture, and I've made performed acid-base reactions my entire life, dissolved rocks in acid, all that type of stuff. But the type of chemistry that led to the discovery of our biosurfactant represented a step change upwards in our capabilities beyond our initial technologies that we used to build the company, basically forming these encapsulating molecules that launched.
Yeah.
So all of that was an instantaneous challenge. It came to us quickly. We wanted to manufacture it, and our emphasis is expedited but careful evaluation of our technologies. Then once we began to realize the scale of the market that was available to us outside the oil field, that added intensity. You wanted to succeed. You did not want to fail for the company, obviously. So it was all these things combined, the COVID year, the unfamiliarity of the science, the opportunity that could quickly allow for a lack of focus when you have a company that's performing in a niche in the oil field, and suddenly you can see all these other markets in front of you with the opportunities they present. It's easy to get distracted and not focus on the things that could allow you to you would miss opportunities to quickly capitalize. So all those things in the weight of the world wasn't on my shoulders alone, but those are the types of things you think about is how do I stay focused? How do we move ahead in the best way forward for the company? And how do we do it in this environment?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I hadn't fully appreciated that because, of course, as you say, you guys were working in some ways in your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And knew how to make that happen and understood the market that it was going into an oil field and having that unique space. And then bringing in the biosurfactants, new technology, new markets, new customers. And in a period of time when, during COVID, I'm not sure anybody really wanted to innovate. Because in fact, a lot of people I talked to said, innovation died for a couple of years, right? And certainly when you think about application development, right? So yeah, you can develop this product, but then convincing a customer who maybe has to do a new formulation and has to go through the whole process of it can be a little bit, can be challenging. And I know it, many people said that type of innovation stalled for a couple of years. So, so that was a big bet.
It's an outstanding example of an organization fulfilling the original mission of the CEO. And he bet on us and we bet on us at a time when everyone would have been happy just saying, well, we'll wait a year or two.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't wait. We were all over it. And the other aspect that I didn't touch on was the specialty chemical markets and the chemicals associated with those bring an obligation for intellectual property protection at a level even higher than what we've encountered with our first generation of product.
Wow.
So we had to quickly engage, find patent resources, law firms that could help us quickly protect our discovery all at the same time. I mean, it was all sudden success.
Yeah.
And so that made it some of the most inspiring but yet challenging times in my career.
Yeah, I love that. And so let's talk about this because I do think when people are in this innovation space, first of all, recognizing what you need to do in a new market is sometimes not obvious, right? Because we base most of our decisions based on past history. As the financial guys would say, past history is no predictor of future success. And oh, by the way, as we record this, the markets are, Lord, I don't know what they're doing today, but this is just past the big tariff announcement of quote unquote Liberation Day, and markets have been in chaos. So I'm hoping it all comes back. We'll see.
Yeah, well,
But anyway, this whole idea of moving into a new market, we often rely on our prior experience, and you weren't able to do it because it was completely new. So how do you navigate to know that you're making the right decisions around people, around direction, around making that happen?
it's usually one of the most challenging aspects of the entire adventure because normally my success rate on decisions was well over 80%. And I can tell you, I don't think I batted that high of an average on this one. We didn't do anything that made the effort, fail, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of trial and error learning around each of those decisions. And then of course you draw on your network, as I'm sure Jimmy and I did, to start gathering people and building a team to help you learn and quickly catapult you or leapfrog your process. The same building blocks that are used to identify a product for potential commerciality in the oil field apply to other markets. They just have different contexts, different customer requirements, different forms of packaging, different cost bases, different environmental and regulatory compliance standards. These are things you must learn within the context of the market. But it is a value of applying templates. I'm not sure how familiar you are with product development models and stage gate evaluation and those types
Yeah.
of models. All that holds true. It's just for us and for me in particular, gaining that context around the other new markets.
Yeah.
And that was, again, where Jimmy shined through, where he's able to help build a team by bringing in folks who had that experience that made it far more a success story than a trial and error story.
So, Charlie, this has been a really great story, and I could continue talking to you for a very long time, I think. If you were giving advice to a young Charlie Landis or a young professional who's looking to have the career success that you've had, what advice would you give?
Stephen Covey publishes The 7 Habits of Successful People, and I'm not going to recite those, but I would say there are 3 things that, as a scientist, I know I could not have progressed through my 35 years without. And I think of them in hindsight, not at the time, but in hindsight, I call them elements for invincible value as a scientist. Not everyone can be Albert Einstein, and you have to find ways of utilizing your skills. So you have to come up with sort of core tenets that describe you as a professional and would be how you would want to be characterized as a professional. And the 3 that come to mind for me is you certainly have to have expertise in some area of your scientific field so that people rely on you for at least that narrow or broad window, depending on the scope of your study, as an expert to help solve problems. You must work with experts in the field, colleagues in the field. You must read the literature. You must do the work, and you must see it in use. You must have this level of broad expertise. And then you must have a passion that makes you wake up without an alarm clock, that makes you close a library on a Friday night. I don't know if people still go to libraries, but in graduate school, I used to get kicked out of the libraries on a Friday night reading about the stuff I was hoping to become employed someday to do. And then you have to hope somebody beeps their horn behind you because you're daydreaming at a left turn signal, thinking about what you're going to do at work. So you have to have some level of passion that makes your commitment insoluble over time. And then the one that I think is missing in American science at the moment is you have to know how much information you need to succeed. And I use two examples to help give people that perspective. The first one is when John F. Kennedy decided that we were going to go to the moon. The moon sat there for the eons, waiting on the certainty of mankind to deliver someone to the moon and return them safely to Earth. And that required virtual certainty on everything they do. But in the oil field, where I grew up, I had a great man who found a lot of oil say that, I don't know, do you know about Prudhoe Bay in Alaska, one of the largest oil fields in America?
I am familiar with it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that was discovered with a fraction of the information, literally about 2/3 of the information that was available at the time to make all discovery. So somewhere in the middle, you have to get comfortable understanding, do I need virtual certainty around the work for me to make decisions? Or can I live with the probability that you're going to fail once in a while? You must have this fear of success. You must have a lower fear of failure than you have for joy for success. And so in my world, I've always lived with, I feel like I'm prepared to make any decision with at least 80% of the information known to me. And that has worked 80% of the time. So if you can get comfortable with where you need to be to make decisions for exploring your entrepreneurial spirit around your ability to succeed or failure, that's a key aspect. You must be talented at something. You must have a drive when others are doubting you to proceed. But you also have to know where you are with what you need to do to make a decision. How much information do you need to be comfortable? You can sleep like Harry Truman did every night he made a decision. And that is, I think, an unspoken secret of how you persist and succeed over decades and decades of career.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you,
Well,
Charlie.
Joel,
This has been great
Joy's
conversation.
in line. Thank you very much for this, Victoria. It's a wonderful pleasure.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I've really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to sharing this conversation with others in the Chemical Show Network. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Keep listening, keep following, keep sharing, and we will talk with you again soon. Thanks for joining us today on The Chemical Show. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and most importantly, share it with your friends and colleagues. For more insights, visit thechemicalshow.com and connect with us on LinkedIn. You can find me at Victoria King Meyer on LinkedIn, and you can also find us at The Chemical Show Podcast. Join us next time for more conversations and strategies shaping the future of the industry. We'll see you soon.